I have a friend who's a songwriter and a motivational speaker. Her name is Janice Stanfield. One of my favorite songs of hers is called "If I Were Brave." What would I do today if I were brave? When I talk about that, and when I've written some stuff about it before, it's like what I think I love about that particular question that she came up with for that song is that it does not require that you be brave. It asks you a totally hypothetical. It asks you to imagine if you were brave. It doesn't judge you for not being brave. It doesn't judge me for not being brave. Then it does, in fact, set us to thinking.
It starts right here, deep in your heart. Start right here. Oh, that's where it starts. Right here. We look to your heart. It's always and only starting right here.
Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger bring over 90 years of clinical experience to this important podcast, and they offer you a guarantee. You will gain something of personal value from each episode. And now, what matters most.
It starts right here. Start right here.
And here we are again. I'm Tom Rutledge. I'm with Dr. Alan Berger and our illustrious producer, Patrick Newman. Good to see you guys today.
We're all starting right here today, right, Patrick?
It's great to see you both.
Right? That's all we can do. Start right here. We're going to talk about self-esteem today, and this is going to be so tuned into it. But it's amazing to me how it's taken to be as old as I am now to really understand. It's not new stuff. It's just how much everything is about being in the moment. That's all there is. Yeah. I mean, I'm today I'm saying that as if I just discovered it.
But look, we do keep discovering it, and there's a reason, man. It's so hard to just stay with now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have trouble with that. My head wants to project into the future or go to the past. I mean, I love that one saying, that one of your nutshell. I love a lot of your nutshell wisdoms, but one of them that I really love is it's okay to go in the past and learn from it. But then get the hell out of there.
Learn from the past and get the hell out of there.
It's like a burning building.
That's right. Get out of it. Because look, if I get stuck in there, man, and I've been going through some challenges lately that have brought something up from my past, and if I go get back stuck in there, man, I can get into a really funky place. And then if I realize, wait a minute, I was back there and I've learned a lot from it. And that grounds me in such a different way, Tom. It really does.
One of the things that I think Lucas, my dog, and I were talking about on the walk earlier today, that I'm getting, that it's one of those deals where I always say hindsight is insight. It's like we always think we're going to have these insights and then change, but really we work on our stuff, we try different things, we practice what we're learning, and then we change, and then we have some kind of insight into it. And what I realize is that I think one of the better things about me these days is I no longer drop anchor in any particular present moment. And so the idea is, because I realize when I start to drift, because we're going to do it over and over again. It's like breath counting meditation. How many times are you going to lose count, in breath counting meditation? It's like you're never going to get. I don't think I've ever been to 3. It's like my monkey mind goes wandering off. But the idea now, even when I'm feeling bad, or if I notice that I drifted over here and I'm worrying about something here that I can't do anything about. What I now have is that recovery voice in my head knows this. He says, "That's okay. You'll be back to the present moment, and just now." And it just keeps bringing you back. And so it's like now when I wander off, I don't freak out about it, because that's one of the things I've noticed about myself is the more I learned about how I mentally messed stuff up, I developed a whole new critic in my head that then criticized me about how I did that. So I would learn that I was mean to myself, and then I would be mean to myself about being mean to myself.
I don't know who among us hasn't lost a significant portion of their life or a significant moment in their life because they were chasing a rabbit,
That's
thinking they needed to be focused on, the acquiring of a thing. And then in the acquiring of a thing, you miss the actual important thing. And it's like a lifelong practice, right? To figure out how to drill down and
Oh, that's
experience what's
perfect.
happening.
Yeah. But see, that's perfect for me in my literal sense, because I was walking with my dog Lucas, and that's exactly. I mean, sometimes they are actually rabbits, but sometimes there are other things. But we're walking along, and he just takes off. He's chasing something, but there's no additional thinking about it. When he can't catch it anymore, when that squirrel's gone up that tree, he just comes walking back to me. Okay,
Yeah, he's
what are we
finished.
gonna?
He's completely done. He's done with what he was doing. Now he's ready to come back to you and hang out with
Right.
you.
He's not downstairs worrying about that squirrel that he didn't get.
No, not worrying about that at all. But we would. That's the difference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we would worry about it.
Came
And
so
then we
close.
judge ourselves, right?
Yes.
You know, if I wasn't so fat and old, I could have gotten that squirrel. If I was Patrick's
Absolutely.
age, I could have gotten that squirrel.
That's right. That's right. But that's right. But I don't think we can emphasize that message enough, though, Patrick. Too, is that everything we talk about, in our work and certainly on this podcast, it's just practice. It's a lifelong practice, and our practice is better at sometimes than other times, and hopefully over time it gets better and more effective. And I think that's one of the cool things about it. But it's not perfection. It's just practice. We have a couple of different ways of saying it. My nutshell about that, Alan, is just practice makes practice. And it's like, and it's amazing how frustrating that is for perfectionists in the height of their perfectionism. But
And I like to say practice makes permanent, and that's why you have to pay attention to the kind of practice you have, because you are creating these grooves, right?
Absolutely.
If it's tennis, you're creating these muscle memories, and if it's relational, or if it's to yourself or others, you're creating certain patterns and habits in terms of your relationship with yourself. So it's very like what we've talked about, and that is the theme for today. So let's state that explicitly. Is that today we're going to be focusing on, we talked about self-esteem last time, what it is, and now we want to focus on how. How do you raise your self-esteem? What are some practical steps that you can take in your life on a daily basis, right, to start to increase your self-esteem? So that's what we're going to focus on today, Tom. Yeah. What's your first tip? What's your first?
Well, the first thing I just bouncing off what you just said is it's not only a daily focus, it's a constant focus. If we look at the paths we've already worn, the grooves we've already made, how did we make those? Well, one of the things I like to tell people is you did that because of something that a lot of us will roll our eyes at when we hear that and say, "Oh, let's talk about affirmations." Well, because we think about Al Franken doing Stuart Smalley and stuff like that, and he kind of put a dent in bringing up inner child work and that kind of stuff back in the day when people start rolling their eyes at it. But I always tell people that if you don't think affirmations work, think about some of the most negative things you believe about yourself or have believed about yourself, and then remember that the word affirm just means to make firm. So the way we got to be the way we are is what you said. It's why practice makes permanent. Practice, thank goodness, it's not actually permanent, because we're talking about today taking what we feel like is permanent and starting to make changes with it. But so that's the first tip, is constant, because the idea is we need, we have all the, I talk about all these little characters, these little messengers in our heads. We have to have that, you can call it what you want, a wisdom voice. A lot of times in our work, I call it a recovery voice. You have to have that voice that's on your own side. It's on my side. And that, because that's the one that's going to keep reminding you of the truth and telling you the truth. And it's really hard at first, because it's like an atrophied muscle. And it's in there, but it doesn't feel very. It's hard to trust it, because we're much more likely to trust negative thoughts about ourselves than positive thoughts, even when we start to believe the positive thoughts. We trust what's familiar.
That's right. We do trust what's familiar. And look, and there's a part of us with some of the negative messages as we got when we were growing up, that we bought those, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The way that the Robert and Mary Goulding talked about it, founders of redecision therapy, is they say that we're given these injunctions that begin with the word don't be happy, Don't be comfortable with yourself. Don't feel good about yourself. All those things. And she says the way they become so toxic is that there's a part of us that decides to cooperate with that because we, as twisted as it is, we want to please our parents. And so if they give us a don't, we'll go ahead and live up to that don't. So we're a good son or daughter. I mean, even though it's going to be at our expense. I heard this one family therapist called it the misguided loyalties. There are misguided loyalties, is that we are loyal to our parents in sometimes very destructive ways.
Well, and of course, I mean, that's where we are also telling people as we're working with them too, is you don't blame yourself when you're looking back at your childhood for that. And it's like Robert Subby in Lost in the Shuffle says, yes, children were victims as adults were volunteers. It's like and we're not even saying that the parents are have a war room in the back where they're drawing out plans how to fuck us up. It's like I mean, there's some pretty bad situations we've run into and listened to and have experienced, but we're talking about well-intentioned people passing along what it was that they got.
Yes, that's right.
And it's and very often making some adjustments to it. A lot of people work off of anti-role models. It's like whatever. I don't know how I'm going to parent this child, but whatever I do, I'm not going to do this and this and this because that's what my father did. And that works to a degree.
Yes,
but it's not. You got to also find some role models that are like, okay, what do you do instead?
I think my dad probably ended up repeating some of the parenting mistakes that his dad had with him, despite his best intentions. Like I don't think it was according to the plan. The kind of, some of the kind of more stern authoritarian things that my dad did, to pass on to me. But I think some of it just happens like unconsciously. Yeah.
Well, and just doing what seems right, and it's interesting you say that because in my case, I found out only after my grandfather had died, and he lived. My dad's dad had lived with us my whole life until I was 17 when he died. Turns out he was, he stopped drinking at some point along the way, so we didn't even know he ever drank at all in our family because you sure don't tell family secrets. It's like. But he was horrible to my father and neglectful and beat him on a regular basis and stuff. And so my dad, in fact, did a lot of that anti-role modeling stuff, Patrick. He was one of the problems I have working through stuff in therapy with my dad is he was so passive. He was, I mean, it's like I could overpower him just by having a thought or wanting something or whatever. He was just not going to give me any of those parental boundaries.
And that's because of the anti-role model, right? Yeah,
because he was beat down. First of all, he was beat down and full of shame because of how he was raised. But the other thing was, I really, I believe my dad trying not to do what his dad did. It's confusing.
Yeah, no, it is confusing, but look, what we're saying is that it's very important for you to get in touch with some of these things that undermine your self-esteem. Because when you've got these kinds of programs running in the background, or I like how you use the word app sometimes when you talk about it. You got what is the app that's running in the background in your mind, right? Is it the low self-esteem app? So that you're filtering everything through that. Is it I'll never be good enough app? I mean, what app is running that you've got, and to discover this is a very important thing. And now, how can people discover it? Well, I think that there's a couple of ways. I really do like using sentence completion work on this stuff. What, I sometimes give an exercise to people when they're exploring this kind of stuff is to say the root of a sentence and then finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. If I felt more worthy, it would be a good one. So you can start to get at what would happen if you actually had more worth in your life. Some of the messages I got growing up about my worth were, and fill that out. So these things allow you, any incomplete sentences like that
Mhm.
allow you to start to bring to the surface, right? Become aware of and conscious of some of the things that are going on about your attitude towards yourself.
Right.
If my unworthiness could talk, it would say what?
Mhm.
See, that's
Mhm.
another one I've used sometimes with people. See, these things are to help you get in touch with some of these things that are in the back of your consciousness, but we're
Right.
asking you to bring them forward.
Right.
It's the app that's running behind,
Mhm.
the app that's running out in front, like
Mhm.
on my computer right now. There's a few things.
Well, in some of the questions, the question, a couple of three of those questions, I think, all fell in the category of hypotheticals, and I love hypotheticals with this stuff because what you're doing is you're helping to free somebody's imagination. I have a friend who's a songwriter and a motivational speaker. Her name is Janice Stanfield. One of my favorite songs of hers is called "If I Were Brave." What would I do today if I were brave? When I talk about that, and when I've written some stuff about it before, it's like, one of the things that I love about that particular question that she came up with for that song is that it does not require that you be brave. It asks you a totally hypothetical. It asks you to imagine if you were brave. It doesn't judge you for not being brave. It doesn't judge me for not being brave. It says, but it does in fact set us to thinking. And one of the things that we have to do in order to move from where we are now that feels uncomfortable to, so you're talking about the how to, because it's not like we have a set of self-esteem guidelines sitting in the back waiting for us to go switch them out. It's not another app. It's not another, you can't just upload it. It's like we have to start thinking, maybe, like what you and I talk about a lot of times, even when we're talking about negative thoughts, can we just get to the place of reasonable doubt? Maybe I'm not a complete motherfucker.
Yeah, that's right.
How's that for a reasonable
Well,
doubt?
I love that, right? Yeah. That's the reason. I love how you bring in the reasonable doubt stuff. I've heard you say that before.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one area, right? So if you start to identify these things, bring them to your consciousness, there's a very important process that takes place, especially when you start to see some of these what we call these concepts about yourself that are so self-destructive and are interfering. You get to challenge them. As kids we couldn't challenge these things, but now as adults we get to weigh in with our opinion towards ourselves, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we don't need to just buy what somebody else has said to us. So that's a very important thing in this. And I know that even with what you're saying now, even if it's just adding some reasonable doubt to the discussion.
It's questioning it, like what you just said. We have to question it. It's that's the thing. It's like because the things that bring us to a place of crisis where we're going to a support group, or we're talking to a therapist, or we're in trouble, we want to, or listen to this podcast trying to figure out what I can do. We're in that place because most of us could take us back to a place where I hadn't even considered the fact that I could question that stuff. It never occurred to me, because I mean that's one of the things that we do when we get into conversation with people about this is like what we're really saying. And sometimes I say it quite literally. They tell me something about themselves and I'll say, "Are you sure?" And they kind of look at me like I'm crazy because they just told me something that they considered a fact about their failure self, or their this or that. I go like, "Are you sure? Have you looked at that carefully? Is it possible that there's something more to you than that?"
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's inserting that little bit of doubt, right, in this whole thing, reasonable doubt about that. So,
well, one more thing though, because something you said was really important about that, which is for us to really work and because this has to be the daily practice of this. Sometimes is about doing things, but sometimes it's in this work it's about thinking and really focusing on this. And we really do. You're talking about challenging people to really challenge themselves, really, to the idea of do I believe it's possible that I could change this? Not just that I may be wrong about this.
That's a good one.
Do I believe it's possible to change it? Because you have to believe that something is possible for your motivation.
And you got to understand what you think about change. I mean, because changing something doesn't mean you're going to automatically be able to do it different, right?
Absolutely.
But changing something starts with something that's very active, but it sounds passive. It's called acceptance.
Mhm.
This is where I am.
Yes.
It's the, another one of your nutshell wisdom. If I just accept myself every day as I am, I will
Mhm.
change.
Yeah, yeah, it's
it's
right.
like,
It's, well, that's the one in simple truth that we've been discovering. As I've discovered, I wrote a book, I think, about emotional sobriety before I even knew anything about recovery, even. But and I actually even call that one a guarantee. That's the name of it. A guarantee. If you every day you accept exactly who you are, you will never stop changing.
that's right. You will never.
And
stop
it's like and that's so counterintuitive to us, because we think we have, again, I think our conscious minds overvalue themselves. They think that, I always think I got to figure all this stuff out myself, instead of, like you're saying, a lot of times it really is the nitty-gritty work is getting in there and listening and considering the stuff and trying different things. Just try this on.
That's right. Well, that's the other thing, is to loosen up about those things. So here's another thing that I think is that, I've been a big fan of Dr. Nathaniel Branden. And if you really want an in-depth study about what self-esteem is, just pick up any of his books. I mean, they're all solid. I mean, his one of the last books that he wrote before he passed away was The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, which I think is a great summary of his work. But any of his other books, he's got one on taking responsibility. He's got a whole collection of things, and any of those will they're just a treasure trove of insights and wisdom. But one of the things that I love that he says, just think about when you start your day, write down 5 things that you would do if you brought 5% more awareness or consciousness to your day.
Wow.
Just 5%. He's saying, let's not set this, you don't have to, double it. But right now, just take 5%. If you brought 5% more consciousness to your relationships, if you brought 5% more consciousness to your work, if you brought 5% more consciousness to your relationship with yourself, what would that do? How would you be different? See, it's back to that theoretical thing, right? Imagining on
it's
how
hypothetical, absolutely.
It's hypothetical, and it's such a powerful way to change. Imagine if you felt 5% better about yourself today. If you no longer tried to prove you were good or that you weren't bad. Right. Put 5% energy towards that. What would your day be like?
Or even with, I'm just playing with that now, but even without you can do the percentage. But the other thing is just the concept that the idea, like something that was akin to what I was saying earlier, that I was learning about myself is how would your day be better if you knew that however you felt in any given moment, you didn't have to stay that way. Because so often, that's what this is what I call the live compartmentalized time that the saboteurs have. Is so if my day goes bad by 2:00 in the afternoon, then the truth is the belief inside of me used to be that how's the day, bad day. They screwed. It's gone. It's like, I see that with people with addiction. If they relapse, or if they get themselves in trouble, stuff like that. Well, the addiction says, well, I got you till, if it happens on Thursday, I got you till Monday. If it happens, in October, I've got you till the first of the year. But it's always a compartmentalized time. I had a young woman in one of my groups one time that just said, I finally figured out that I can count 24 hours from any time of day. And it's like, it took me about, as long as I like watching your face. That's what I did. It took me a minute. I had to go like, oh yeah, well, that would change everything. Because, and then that's the other joke that you and I've used before is like, if you fall down, if I go outside and take a walk and fall down, I don't say I'll get up tomorrow. I get up. And that's what we have to do. We have to, what could be different? And I love that when you're talking about those questions, is because they all inspire you to look at how you could, what would you change? How much would you change if you had a little bit more?
Yeah, my early experiences in therapy, I had an inner program that I was running that I was just so convinced was things that were concrete were actually liquid, and then the emotional sobriety, right, is about, taking a fact and then, applying some consciousness to it, right. So that, you're not just letting that fact sit by itself, that, you're, you can adjust, you can make adjustments, around the things that happen to you in your life. And,
Yes, make it work for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the complaints I always have is if I hear things that make me think about therapists selling, I call it selling therapy off the rack. That basically they're not tailoring it. It's like, these are the folks, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm sure there are times where I've been guilty of this, but the idea that if that's where we get the idea of resistant clients. It's like if a client isn't doing what I want them to do, or responding to my amazing wisdom the way I want them to respond, then they're a difficult client. But I heard Richard Bandler one time say, "There's no such thing as resistant clients. There are only inflexible therapists." Yeah, I love that, except for when I'm dealing with a resistant client. So.
Oh man!
But we're also talking about another theme that you and I have too, and that's lowering expectations. That you get more done when you bring the expectations down, like when you're talking about
5%. I love
5%. Yeah, you had this, and though you don't have any of it now. What if it was just a little bit more?
Yeah, and see, and we're back to the paradox again. And to get there, you got to own that you have high expectations. See, it's absurd. It's funny. I was talking to one of my buddies the other day who's going through some physical stuff. A mutual friend of ours that we know that's dealing with some physical problems right now. And, and he's, really struggling with making a decision, what's the best treatment and stuff like that. And, he's trying to decide what's going to preserve his level of functioning, right, before he had this problem, what we call your pre-morbid level of functioning. And I wrote to him and I says, I just realized with everything you've just shared to me that I've had this expectation in my life that I would grow old. Of course I would. And hopefully become wise. But I always expected that I wouldn't change physically. I mean, and I say it out loud, and it's so darn absurd. But I can't tell you how my mind seems still young and alive and vibrant. And then I tell my body to go do that. And it goes, what? Are you kidding? Sit on the floor and then have to get up? Are you nuts? You sit down there with the kids, it's going to take us 20 minutes to get off the floor.
I know it. No, I think that. Oh, I know that the other day I was trying to just hook my dryer up to the wall, the vent thing, and it's like getting down the floor was hard. Then I got down there and I didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't see anything. So I had to get up and go back. It's like no, nobody ever told me about that stuff, and but the thing about that though, and this kind of makes me grieve what I didn't know. Kind of wish I had known this about all the old people in my life when I was a young person, because I go like, oh my God, they weren't old. They just were in those old bodies, because I'm talking to a 30-something-year-old person, I'm Patrick Peer, as long as somebody doesn't mention something, or every now and then somebody will call you sir, and kind of blow the illusion of the thing. But it's like, I sometimes ask people, well, what age are you really? And I go like, I'm 35. That's what I figure. Some people go younger, some people go older, but it's like you go like, I'm not 60, I'm not 67. That's for sure. But I am.
You are 67.
My
when
body is.
When you first were called sir, was it like a lash?
It was just weird at first, and then you go through the period where you get offended by it, and then I stopped doing that. I would tell people, please don't call me that. It's we'll do that joke where don't call me Mr. Rutledge. Mr. Rutledge is my father. It's like but then I realized I was always telling nice young people who have been brought up right to have good manners and to respect their elders to not. So then I just decided that this was probably about 2 or 3 years ago. I remember telling Dee Dee, I said, I'm going to stop telling people not to call me sir, or if they call me Mr. Rutledge, I'm not going to insist that they just have to stop doing that, because that's just me being offended by my age, you know? So that's the most important. If you ask people, Patrick, what it's like to get older, to grow old, the word that comes to mind that comes up more than any other that I could like to ask people that, and it's weird. It's just weird. It's not what we thought, like Alan said.
No, it's not what we thought. Yeah, I sort of, thought somehow my body would just still be able to keep on functioning the way it's always functioned. Because there is that difference. It's so true when you say in your mind, my mind still seems so young in so many ways. It's almost like it doesn't, if it ages at all, it ages in terms of that I'm aware of more things and have more fund of knowledge.
Yeah, I love that part. I'm smarter, I'm wiser.
My knees hurt. My knees, my back is sore. Last week, I was struggling with my back being out.
Yeah,
my God, I threw my back out going to pick up a bagel for Maddie.
There you go.
I was a little bagel. Give me a break. It's like not 250-pound deadlift. It was a bagel.
Yeah, if you had 5% more wisdom, you wouldn't have done it.
I would have pick up a bagel. She's 8 years old. Her back is still okay.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. So that's one thing, is make these absurd statements about how you think you should be. My body still should be able to do everything I did when I was 20 years old. I mean, oh my God, it's not, when I say it out loud, I realize how absurd it is. But when it's in my head, there seems like a truth to it, You're
talking about comparing ourselves to what we thought or actually didn't think was going to happen. But in this case, sometimes it's about comparing to other people. Right. And sometimes it's specific people, but a lot of times it's the comparison, the old compare and despair line in AA that I love that one. And it's like is the idea. Yeah, that's right. It's sort of like, oh, I should be able to, these other people do this and I should be able to do that. And it's like, not necessarily why, it's like, we want to get out of these broad general statements that become these scripts that come from those injunctions you're talking about from the beginning.
That's right. Those
we rewrite the script, record it in our own voice. It's no longer in another person's voice. It's in our own voice. So when you ask somebody, well, why do you think that? Well, I just think that. Who told you that? Oh, I told myself that. It's like, well, not originally. It may not even be a person that told you that very thing originally, but it was a circumstance, and it was how you interacted with other people. That's how we learn.
So in the frame of self-esteem, so if acceptance is like the fundamental starting place, recognizing where you are, then what's the next step, would you say, when it comes to recognizing your own self-worth and moving towards a place of more self-acceptance?
Well, I think we've hit the second part. Somebody write this down. We may be coming up with something. It's like the first part is acceptance. The second part is doubt. Give yourself the ability to doubt. Like we're talking about reasonable doubt, but it's like just the idea that it's the maybe not thing. Maybe this is not set in stone. I think that opens up the possibility.
Having the imagination that better is possible. Yeah.
If we're making a list here, I think one of the things too, that there's a place that we've been dealing with this a lot in the Thursday night group with the fourth, fifth, and sixth step. It's like one of the tougher parts is you need to at some point engage other people. It's like we've all tried to change ourselves in isolation. We've all tried to do all kinds of different things, but it's like we need, and it doesn't mean you have to tell everybody in the whole world, but you do need to begin to talk. It can be therapy, but it doesn't have to be therapy. It's just, you need to begin to make something real by talking about it with somebody else and to be able to get some feedback, to get some other perspective. And also, I think to talk to somebody else about something that feels vulnerable First of all, it gives you hopefully an experience that vulnerability is part of strength, not weakness, which is something most of us don't know at the beginning of this. But the other thing is there's something about just making it more real when we admit it out loud to somebody else.
That's right. No, I think that's powerful, man, because I think what happens, Patrick, is that, we're always moving towards our wholeness, right? If we don't get in the way. And there is an organismic wisdom that we have. Just like if you are out of equilibrium with your temperature, right? If your temperature is off, your body's going to automatically do things to get your temperature back to the right place. Well, you don't do that consciously. That's part of your autonomic nervous system doing that. We have an autonomic nervous system that's psychologically focused, not just physically focused. And if we stay out of our way, we start moving in a direction of being able to change some of the things that we want to change. It's amazing how powerful that is if we're working with someone. I know Tom has experienced this just like if I have. As soon as, let's say, I've opened up a possibility for someone, meaning I've said something to them that now makes it possible for them to say something that they've been needing to say. All I need to do is get that started, because something inside of them is going to continue to find the other words that they need to say to heal themselves. But they've got to have that moment where it begins, right? And that's an acceptance. I haven't been saying what I want. Let's try on, let's own what that reluctance is, and then let's start to deal with it. I've seen a lot of people just get into, if they're sitting there and they have this thing of this, what I call this defiance towards a parent. I will not give you the satisfaction of my success. Let's say I worked with this one young man that his dad was on him all the time. You should be like this. You should be like this. Very bright young man. And he continued to disappoint his father. And he, part of him is baffled. It's like, why can't I do this? And I says, well, let's figure it out. So I had him say to his dad, I won't give you the satisfaction of my success. Fuck you. Right? And I had him start to say, well, you wouldn't believe what came out. I never want to see you feel good about it. You've made me feel like shit my whole life, and now it's my turn to get back at you. I didn't have to find encouragement.
Gusher. You hit a gusher there. It's like,
you hit a gusher. And see, that's what's inside of us, Patrick, is he wanted to say all those things for so long. He didn't feel like he could say it because he wanted to be a good son, right? He couldn't say that kind of stuff because his self-concept, right, left that out, right? Excluded those kinds of things. But what we did, and obviously in the work that we were doing together, made that a possibility. Made it a possibility for him to say what he dared never say. For him to express what he would never express directly to his dad because he felt his dad had all the power. Well, he really didn't. His dad doesn't have that power. In fact, he proved that. He showed his dad who had the power because his natural course of events, if he would just follow who he is, he would have been successful.
Right.
It took a lot of energy for him to sabotage his success.
Well, and that's a great example if we're making whatever third point or whatever it is about involving other people in that case, because what you're talking about it's not like that young man is sitting there with that option and he's choosing not to take it. It's the option's there, but it's not even in his line of sight.
Right.
It's like what, one of the things I think that we do is we go into somebody's life and I go into somebody's consciousness with them, and it's like, and then some people have more of a linear way of working with folks. That I don't know how to walk a straight line, much less think one. It's like, but it's what you did there was you went, what's this over here? Look at this. And it's like, I mean, if we could come into each other's physical space and have that experiment and look around and go like, what do you notice here? And you go like, well, what's this thing? And go like, oh, I hadn't even noticed that. I didn't even think about that. but you open that up and immediately and that's a great example. Out of his way, it's one, you're basically, and that is it too, man. We are helping, you and I are helping other people do this, but it's always about getting out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting when I talk to chiropractors of all people, it's like they think this way.
They do.
Yeah. They think truly, organically, holistically. The idea of we need the body is naturally going to be healing itself. We just need to be sure that we're not, where you're getting stuck. We need to help you get unstuck.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's amazing. Yeah, and I think that's
well,
that's truly holistic thinking.
It's holistic thinking, and you've even helped me with that. With the recent thing I'm going through, that this one guy's been stalking me now since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And he continues to harass me and tries to sabotage. And up to this point, I've just been taking it. There's a part of me that felt guilty and ashamed and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you helped me with this to say, hey, it's time to let go of that. And now I'm trying to find a way to stand up. I'm thinking about filing a restraining order on this person. If that's not it, maybe a civil suit. But I'm done with it. I'm done with taking it. And that would have happened naturally had I not stopped myself with my guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this stuff is powerful. This is very powerful, and that's one of the things that I think that Tom and I really share, Patrick, is we have an unshakable faith in humanity. Is that when somebody really starts to open up and start to do the work at this level, they're able to become what they've always wanted to be in their life. They're able to be what they can be. And we got a lot of stuff that gets in our way. You're not made to feel bad about yourself, man. When you're first born, you just accept yourself as you are. You don't have all these rules in your head about who you should be and how you should be. You just are. And that's the next level. It's not like when you get self-esteem, you're better than or less than anybody else. You just are. It's not an issue anymore. There's not even a comparison. I mean, it goes out the window. It's just what did you call it, Tom? Being, right? You're just
it's about being. Yeah. I love what you just said too. First of all, it just felt when you said that we have this in common and an unshakable faith in humanity. And I thought I had a little meeting real quickly. Went, do I? I'm not sure. It's like, yeah, I think I have exactly what he's talking about, because one of the things I thought about when you said that and talking about clients is how often it comes up where I will say to somebody fairly early on in their process, listen, you can do this.
Yeah.
I promise you. I'll say, I promise you, you can do it. Now, and the truth is, if somebody asked me, and there's probably somebody has that, they have at times said, why do you think it? I said, if I didn't, here's the thing, you're not paying me to make you feel better. You're paying me to be honest with you and to help you out. It's like, I said, if I didn't think that, the way that would have played out in therapy is I would not have said it. It wouldn't come up but I say it because I can just feel that you have what it takes to do this work. And it is that what you just said is validating to me that because that's not me just blowing smoke. That's me really believing that not only that person can do it, but that I think that one of the things that is often missing for people we see is they've never had somebody believe in them.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that part of our job.
Oh, me too.
It is a beautiful part to go like because it's like, that's not hard. When I get to know somebody, I go like, no, I can root for you. I can believe in you, and I can share that with you, and I always own that, I got the easy job. They're the ones that have to go through the stuff. It's but that's a beautiful part of it.
Well, and look, back to one of our earlier things, and I don't, I do believe some people have lost touch with that completely and have become evil. It's not like I don't think that there's evil people out there. Yeah. But I think they've lost their humanity or got so buried or they were so abused or whatever that they just can't find it anymore. And those are the lost souls, man. Those are the people that we've lost in our lives. So
people of the lie.
People of the Lie, as Scott Peck called it. And
Mhm.
it was really, if you want to read a great book about it, that's another
It is.
great
It's
book to
wonderful.
get hold of, as well as his first book. You know, The Road Less Traveled. This is The Road Less Traveled. You know, it was opening up. I had a great thought the other day, Tom. I said it's very interesting to me. You know, when you look at things like what is a mega bestseller in terms of psychology. Let's take his book, The Road Less Traveled. Or let's take somebody's that I'm familiar with, his more book, the Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. About 6.5 million copies have sold. That's now think about that. There's 360 million plus people in our country. You know how many million copies have sold Stephen King's books?
How many?
A lot more than 6.5 million. 20 million, 30 million, 40 million.
Yeah.
Listen to this. This one author, he's a religious author, and he's very good. I can't remember his name right now, but he's got over 150 million books in print.
Of books? Oh, you don't mean different books. You mean of all his books, he has 150 in print
million copies
existing on the planet. Yeah. Wow.
150 million copies. 6.5 million, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Think about this. I mean, there's something that happens. It's like, you know, there's some amazing ideas out there, but there's something still not. Our consciousness, our collective consciousness is still having a hard time embracing this. It's the road less traveled. Peck was right about this. I mean, it's the road less traveled.
Right.
Anyway, this is a great show, Tom. What do you think we're going to do next time? You got an idea about where you'd like to dig into?
It's hard to have an idea right now because I'm way into this one. It's
well, let's keep this dialogue.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because I like
Self-Esteem Part 3.
Can I make a pitch to you guys real quick?
Yes.
Yeah, pitch it.
I've heard Dr. Berger talk about some of his early experiences working at a mental hospital. You were a clinician, Tom, right, at different places. Some of your early careers and anecdotes and experiences, I think I would find very entertaining. I think others might.
I would love to do that. I started my first job was in a state hospital in Missouri, so it's
let's go ahead and plan for that next time. So let's sign off now, you guys.
See you later, Patrick. Bye.
Until next time. Bye.
It's a spiral, not a circle. Goes round, round, round. Look for solutions, be your own friend. Never say never in either direction. Look in the mirror, trust the reflection. Deep in your heart, start right here. That's where it starts.